Broadcasting on TikTok as well. And we'll see how long. So there's a potential for this live stream to be shut down here today. So I just want to put that out there. There's potential for that because of the potency and the honesty of today's topic. So there's a first few things I want to say before I get into the meat and potatoes, if you will. So first of all, I don't care about reputation. I'm not here to appear as good and kind and whatever a person thinks a woman should be, a Black woman should be, a woman over 40 should be, a woman from here should be, a woman with that kind of background should be, whatever story, whatever imagination, whatever belief system anybody watching this, seen and unseen, can think. I care zero, beneath zero, zilch about reputation. I don't give a fuck about smear campaigns, lies, campaigns to destroy, hurt, kill, harm, destroy. I care zilch. Okay? Zilch. Reconcile your fear of death and you will be the same. Reconcile your fear of being killed, abandoned, destroyed, harmed, left, fuck, and you will feel the same. So first of all, before we get into the meat, just know that, okay? Second of all, I am here on behalf of freedom. I am here on behalf of freedom. I'm talking to women today. Men can benefit. Men can gain knowledge here. A wise man, a man who is sincere about freedom for all, who is sincere about true love, who is sincere about liberation. A wise man who is sincere about that will lean in. He will give himself over to me and this cause. Again, we'll see how long the TikTok thing can go today, because we know they very easily ban. All somebody got to do is be upset with what you're talking about, and boom, boom. So TikTok, in the event that happens here today, you can come on over to YouTube, assuming that keeps going. Okay, so just know that if this shuts down, you can go up to the link in my bio here on TikTok, and there is a YouTube icon. You can click that icon, and that'll bring you on over here to YouTube, assuming that gets to keep going as well. Okay? So hi. My name is Naima, and apparently I'm alien to this planet. Okay? Like, we could even say women are in many ways, when she's devoid of lies and story making. The topic, sex the ego hates. To clarify that a bit more, this is not necessarily about intercourse. This is about the energy of sex. Yes, intercourse, and the energy of sex. Thank you for all those hearts. That helps to spread the word. I appreciate that. This is about the arousal of a woman who's on. This is about a woman and who she is when she is devoid of lies and story making. I repeat, a woman, today's topic is speaking to who a woman is when she is devoid of lies and story making. And we can add fear to that as well. The world as is, as many of you already know, is littered with lies. The way many of you who are listening to my voice now, the way you live now is littered with lies and story making. You lie to yourself to feel better about your current circumstance. You lie to the men in your lives so that their ego gets to be secure, so that your whoever, your friends, whoever is in your life, we lie, little lies, big lies, to maintain whatever you're in, whatever your life looks like. And for every human being, me, you, and everybody else, the thoughts we think is what keeps us wherever we're living, wherever you're living in the world, wherever you're living, what your life looks like, what it feels like, etc. There are thoughts and feelings that keep you there. And we all know that when you're ready for something different, your thoughts need to change, your feelings need to change. Now, just to give a little bit of, hold on. I come to you as a woman who has lived a very unconventional life since I was a teenager. Okay. I repeat, I come to you as a woman who has lived a very unconventional life regardless of how it looks. I know I look polished, and I am. I enjoy dressing well. And part of the reason, aside from the fact that I enjoy being polished and dressed well, part of the reason why I'm together and I'm fine in my togetherness is because of how primal I am. It helps me to keep myself present in a way to interact with the mundaneness of humans. Okay. So, regardless of how put together and polished and articulate and organized that I am and I appear, I'm very animalistic, as is every other human. We just do a very, very good job often and exert an exorbitant amount of energy to hide the animals that we are. Again, everybody, your holy priest, your religious mother, your father who you respect so dearly, your children's preschool teachers, everyone, every fucking body who breathes is an animal to their core. And we exert every day, every single day, we exert an exorbitant amount of energy to appear professional, responsible, decent, kind, good, wholesome, trustworthy, dependable, all those things. Why? Because we want access to resources, people, money, people's mind, people's love, people's affection, people's attention, and biologically, we need to belong somewhere. This is every single human being that's breathing. This is the case. Let's start there. Okay? So, this is why people love to drink, to take the edge off, to release their inhibitions. This is why we want to have sex for a release, because the way we exert an exorbitant amount of energy to lie, to appear to be something that we may not necessarily be, to belong, to fit, to keep our job, to keep our spouse, to look like good parents. Okay, we exert an exorbitant amount of energy every day for all of our lives to do that. Now, we're going to narrow this now. So I just heard Something just happened. Okay. Now we're going to narrow this to the female population. we are now, I am now narrowing this to the female population. The female population who walks around with breasts, with a vagina, with a womb, with deep feelings and calls and desires that she suppresses every day, often for all of her life. She suppresses her animal instincts, her longing to connect, her longing to love, her longing to be beautiful, her longing to serve, her longing to connect, and the myriad of ways she longs to do that. She exerts an exorbitant amount of energy every day to not long, to not say what she means, to not connect, to not have her deepest needs met, to not look too sexual, to not be uh, uh, highly interactive in all the ways that she would be if she was not walking around every day exerting energy to appear good, to appear kind, to appear decent, etc. And so the result of exerting this exorbitant amount of energy for a female being to appear good and nice and decent and selfless and loving, the consequence is we become jealous. We become greedy. We become resentful. We become quietly demonic. Quietly. We'll smile. We'll engage in all the activities that make us appear helpful and decent and a good woman and kind and good. And very quietly, we are seething, seething, seething with hate, with lust, with urges to destroy, all because we are exerting every day an exorbitant amount of energy to lie. Why? Because we need the men in our lives to see us a certain way. Because we need our mothers to see us a certain way. Because we need to keep this job. Because we want to be and look like good parents to our children, to society at large. Because if we don't, we will look bad, wrong, dangerous, like a troublemaker, like a problem, like a Jezebel, like a Mary Magdalene, like a home wrecker, like a cheater, like a mean woman, like a disruptor, like an animal, like an evil witch. And if we do that, we will not belong anywhere. We will end up broke, alone, under a bridge, and we will die there. This is the consequence. This is why. Now, this is the female version. Males have their own version of this, but I am talking to women right now. So we justify all the reasons why we lie. And they're good lies, right? Well, I'm a mom and I need to be a responsible mom. And so I can't do this and that because that'll pull me away from my child, or that'll make me look like, whatever the thing is you're afraid of looking like, selfish, fill in the blank. And so the agreement that you quietly make, whether you consciously think this or not, the agreement that you quietly make is that I will trade my freedom, I will trade truth for the appearance of being good. And so while on the surface, it looks like, yeah, exactly, that's the right thing to do. On the surface, your children pay psychically. You pay cyclically. The men in your life, people in your life pay psychically. As Carl Jung has said, the greatest tragedy of a family is the unlived life of the parents. It's not in your face, it's not direct, it's underneath psychically that everybody loses. So, how this looks psychically, before I go on, how this looks psychically is when a woman, a mother, calls herself being good and selfless because I'm a mom, and is that she holds back on her dreams, on the thing that pulls, that somehow she thinks that she can't do that. Whatever the story is, because remember I said at the beginning, the only way you can stay in the reality is lies and stories that you tell yourself. That's the only way you can stay there. Okay. So, whatever story she tells herself to keep herself there, and how that psychically affects the kids is, for those of you who you knew, right? We could talk about this from like, not, it was very talked about publicly, because oftentimes women or the children of these women don't talk publicly. But what has become popularized is Nigerian children whose parents constantly, or even immigrants, parents constantly tell them how I sacrificed for you. Look at everything I did for you. I held back on my dreams for you. I didn't follow my heart because of you. I didn't develop myself and recognize that all this was possible with you. And instead, I let you be the reason why I didn't play the game I really longed for. You are the reason why I stayed living like this. You are the reason. And so what that does psychically is it burdens the child. So now there's a multitude of things. One, as we've been hearing on the internet, there's a resentment, there's a frustration, there's a longing to want to live up to what the parents expected at the expense of what you genuinely long for in your own heart and desire. And so you spend an interesting amount of time trying to live up to what your parents want, wanting to pay them back in some kind of a way through your life, which is often not what you genuinely long for. And then at some point, once you get tired of wearing that burden or whatever you would call it, you give it up and you go on to live the life that you truly long for. Now, this is something that we've heard many times in the immigrant community. Another way it could look is that you have this, you see your mom who sacrifices herself for you, right? You see her struggle, you see her tired, you see her never taking care of herself, you see all those things. And then you find yourself wanting to overcompensate for some reason in your life, wanting to do all these things that you're like, I don't really want to do this, but I feel like I just need to do extra. I need to go harder. I need to play bigger. When something in you doesn't really want to do that, but psychically, your mother transferred that to you. This is what Carl Jung, or as Carl Jung himself talked about, where he would have these primal urges with his clients. So I'm talking about this in a multitude of ways. I talked about it with the immigrants. I'm talking about it if you worked with a mom who never took care of herself, and you just saw her beat herself into the ground to take care of you, because that's what mothers do, right? And now this third angle I'm talking about it at is Carl Jung himself, who's um, many people call him the godfather of deep psychology. He talked about when he'd be working with female patients, how there'd be this primal urge that would rise that he exerted an exorbitant amount of energy to control, right? Because that's the good thing to do. That's the decent thing to do. Where did we even get that from? But that's the decent thing to do. So we're going to park that, right? That has something to do with what's coming in this conversation today around the the creation of stories and lies to bind humans to get them to agree to a system. We're getting there. So he said that he would have these primal urges with these clients that, and this is a married man with kids. Carl Jung was a married man with kids. And he saw that the energy that he was exerting to control and keep himself good and tamed, right? And he wrote about this. I can't remember what book it was in. If anybody here knows this story and knows the book where this is in, I would love for you to put it in the comments. But in this book, he talked about, he knew that if he didn't act on this to find out what this was. Keep in mind, Carl Jung is credited with bringing the feminine to the unconscious mind, recognizing that the unconscious is feminine. This was not widely talked about or accepted prior to Carl Jung. So let's put some context around here and understanding what he was traversing. He was doing something pioneering. And when you do something pioneering, you're going to be dangerous. You are a problem. You are disrupting what has been the dominant belief system with humans. So keep in mind, this is Carl Jung, the godfather of deep psychology, who brought the anima and the animus to the mainstream, who uh, um, was loved and hated during his time because Freud was the revered man at the time. Freud was on cocaine, which was legal at the time. He was very, what we would call toxic masculine, is what Freud was. This was well documented. This is well known. This is not my opinion. He was considered toxic. He had these very disturbing views when it came to women and who she was, etc. And when Carl Jung came onto the scene, he had a much more holistic view of the feminine. And Carl Jung actually used to be a mentee of sorts of Freud, and they would exchange notes. And when Freud started to really bring forth this knowledge that he was only coming to understand in his relationship with his female clients, this is where he and Freud started to disagree. And this is part of what split their relationship. All of this is documented. You can go research it if you want to. Okay. So he realized, now was a deep thinking man who really was truly called on understanding what's going on with patients. Jung was dealing with psychotic patients and high neurotic patients, male and female, a deep psychosis, uh, deep hallucinations of the mind. This is what Carl Jung was dealing with professionally, okay? And so he knew that if he didn't pursue what is this urge like this with these and the particular clients as well, he knew, and this is how I'm connecting this to, you psychically burden your children when you don't respond to call, to longing. Shout out to Nicole, who uses the word call, okay? You could call it longing, you could call it sincere desire that never quits. He knew that if he didn't explore what is this longing, that his daughter, he talked about this, you can go read about it, that his daughter would struggle to secure a husband. You, why? Because when a man put forth control from a place of like, no, versus consciously exploring something. I'm not talking about loose and wild shit, but Carl Jung was like, I want to consciously explore this inside of a container, which is the right way to do this. That he would have this pulling him and controlling him from underneath, which is why for those of you who have watched quite a bit of my content, I've talked about that you can think you're controlling something, being good, being righteous, being whatever you want to call it, that makes you look like you're doing a good job of constraint. That on the surface, it looks like constraint and control, but it's controlling you underneath in your unconscious mind the whole time. And then what it does is it comes out in neurotic behavior. It comes out where how you interact with your daughter. He talked about this, which is why he said, if I don't explore this, and he didn't say it's going to control me underneath, he always talks about it in the unconscious mind. It's going to psychically impact my daughter, and she's going to be locked to me in a particular way, which will prohibit her ability to connect with a husband. This is how things psychically control us, particularly our primal energies control us underneath when we don't consciously, deliberately explore what is this that's going on. And for women, this is where the heat begins. This is where the oh shit. I'm going to look like a whore. I'm going to look crazy, dirty, weird, strange. And this is what I'm getting at here today. Now, before I go on, why does this matter? Why? I care about love, freedom. I said here in the beginning, I am here on behalf of freedom. I am here on behalf of love, true love. I am here on behalf of liberation. My screen is jumping over here on YouTube. So if it just know, I'm telling you right now, the screen is jumping, okay? So I am here on behalf of liberation. Now, how does this connect with what I said earlier about the lies that we live in here? Just simply put, practically everything we think unconsciously is a lie. Keeping in mind, 90+% of our behavior is unconscious. We don't think to ourselves, well, I'm going to do this, feel like this, do it. It's unconscious, okay? I went live the other day and I talked about a woman responding to primal urges, and that's her path to liberation. Responding to primal urges, like Carl Jung talked about. Excuse me. How Carl Jung talked about, if I don't explore these in a deliberate way, they're going to psychically burden my children and inevitably psychically burden his marriage as well. And his wife clearly had the awareness and the expansiveness of mind to understand that he needed to explore this, because she cooperated and agreed and eventually thanked, particularly a woman named Tony. I want to complete this part right here to really get at, oh my Lord, what can potentially happen as a woman and a man, because we need men in on this. We need men who truly care about freedom. That, like, listen, I mean it when I say freedom. Freedom in your mind, freedom in your body. Truly, we need men. We need men and women free in order to really like live the lives that we call heaven on earth, good, holy, all the things, pure, all that. And then for those of us who feel called to have a real ripple in the world through our businesses, yes. And all of this is documented, so you can go look this up, okay? There was one of his patients, her name was Tony. One of Carl Jung's patients' name was Tony. And he had one of these primal, strong pulls with Tony. He and Tony became lovers. Everybody knew. Of course, there were people who had a problem with it and people who totally supported it, okay? He wrote about this. It was in his relationship with Tony that he got a chance to explore and come to understanding about the unconscious feminine mind. And that is the only, almost the only, It is a strong reason why we even have what we have today about understanding the unconscious mind and the feminine nature of the unconscious mind. He wrote in detail about how basically he was underground psychologically in his relationship with Tony, exploring this, how he would, the underworld, if you will, it was like exploring the underworld. This is so lovely to me. Exploring the underworld and how his formal family, his wife and children, were his like a stabilizer of sorts. Because in his relationship with Tony, it was high chaos. And he talked about this. He said, you have to be very careful when you start exploring the unconscious mind because of the immense power that lives there, the immense power. And his wife admitted, see, this is why powerful men need truly powerful women. Truly powerful women. I'm talking about powerful in the mind, okay? His wife admitted in her thanking of Tony that I thank Tony for being to Carl what I could not be to him. Do you want that kind of freedom of mind as a woman to do your work in the world, to be the woman that is required for your vision, for your life? Tony and Carl, they wrote about this because there's a whole, if you go to Amazon, like you can get movies on Amazon Prime, there's a film, I forgot what it's called, but a bunch of his students are interviewed. And it's old. You know, I can tell a video is old. It's old video of his different students because the Carl Jung Institute is all over the world. You can like go to them all over the world. And they talked about, I don't know if they, maybe in the movie, but I think, does anybody know this movie that I'm talking about on Amazon Prime? Please put it in the chat. Uh, and also in just clips you can find if you go do some research around the internet about he would be at Tony's house. You drive by and see him at Tony's house. He'd be in the underworld for days, weeks with Tony, doing this work, cultivating this work, getting to know. They were lovers, okay? And sometimes Tony would be at his family's house and they would be having dinner together. His wife, children with Tony. There was a complete understanding of the relationship. It was also written that sometimes all three of them, Carl, his wife, and Tony, would travel to conferences together around Europe. And it was known. It was written about how men hated Carl Jung, how they would come around him and try to compete and act like they knew things. But they were so full of ego, so full of this competitive nature that could never win when you're dealing in the feminine. The feminine knows. It is vast and bountiful. The competitive masculine, there is zero competition because it seeks to conquer, it seeks to control, it seeks to grab and force. And when you're in true submission to the feminine, there is no competition, there is no winning. And if you want to play the game of winning, you win in submission. So I share all that to give a real live example that's well documented of what it looks like when one, we start to explore primal energies, particularly for those of us who are called. Not every, that's a whole other conversation. When you're called to do significant work in the world, okay? Now for women, you beautiful. And particularly melanin dominant women. Okay, so this conversation is for all women, and where danger could start to feel intensified is when melanin dominant women make it a lifestyle to explore their primal selves, responding to these primal energies, recognizing where your ego gets activated, where shame gets activated, but there's a part of you that is longing to be a slave. Okay? Longing to give yourself over, to explore this part of you that holds tremendous power. Now, let's talk about a little bit, right? A bit about how, like, what keeps us not exploring this kind of power that would have us crawling and just totally giving ourselves over to know this power in ourselves, to know, to have it, to be able to access it, to be able to be it, to be these electrifying beings walking around earth, refined, willing to interact with all of life versus crossing our legs and wanting to be good and together and to appear decent and so clenched in our bodies and so shallow in our breath and so wanting to have a man who further exacerbates our clenching, further exacerbates and encourages us being a sanitized, small, good woman because we get our bills paid. So we trade our vast intelligence. We trade our ability to know like this and to respond to our knowing easily, immediately, which allows us to command, to call in, to interact, to respond in true grace, not like, didn't I say do it? But actually be so bottomed out in our pussy, to be in such ownership of our vastness, feeling no need to push it away because I need to be good. I need to look like a wife. I need to make sure I talk like this so I look like peace and I look like a good woman because that's how I get somebody to pay my bills. That's how I get somebody to love me. That's how he feels like a man. And then I get to get all the I'm a wife. And in exchange, you lose your ability to wield the power that you long for your entire life, to be able to build up through your way of being, like true rested feminine that comes from down deep and comes out down deep in how you talk to her, down deep in how you talk to people, business conversations, and your leadership. That's not, you got to put on the suit and be a leader. No, you talk calmly from the base of who you are because you make it a lifestyle to refine primal urges versus no. How's that gonna? I, I can't. Which leaves you just admiring women like me from afar, wanting to, wishing to, thinking that I can, but you can't. Quietly hating yourself and hating other women who you see free in their voice, free in their body, knowing they're being unwilling to admit it. The way Carl Jung's wife did, who said, "Thank you, Tony, for being what I couldn't be for my husband." That was also her admission that I am not going to unleash in this way. I'm going to maintain this position. And that's not a problem because that's a conscious choice. And clearly there was a reconciliation and a development within herself that was required for them to sustainably be in that relationship. Carl was in that relationship with Tony for the rest of his life, their entire lives. She actually died before Carl, and they were in relationship when she died. Do you want this kind of power? Not like, yeah, I want it, but this is where we are today. The uproar that's happening worldwide with anything and everything. The uproar, the fights, the everything. And folks talking about the apocalypse and Armageddon and the end times, etc. Keep in mind, times before us, this came up. It's the end times, it's the end times. And the end times are happening in the mind. The lies are dissolving. So let's get into these lies. Perhaps that's the direction. Perhaps that's the direction. Let me look over here. Yes, Tony was a woman. Tony was a woman. Thank you for sharing, Latanya. Thank you, Mrs. Santali, for sharing. Hello, Empress. Thank you for sharing, Salt. Hello, Mickey. Hello, Osun. Yep, what you resist persists. Yeah, they're used interchangeably, unconscious mind, subconscious mind. Different people talk about, some people talk about them interchangeably. Some people talk about the subconscious mind being the mind that's immediately out of view, but can very quickly come into view. And the unconscious mind is the hidden mind. So it really just depends on who's talking. Matters of the Heart. That's it. Thank you, Gina. That's the movie on Amazon Prime that I mentioned. Amazon Prime, yes. So if you like want to go like buy a movie or rent a movie on Amazon Prime, it's called Matters of the Heart. That's what it's called. Thank you. That is what it's called. Where his students are talking. It's old clips of his students talking about what he was like, what it was like working with him, what it was like at that time. That'd be a great opportunity for you to begin to glean some insight in addition to whatever other research you feel called to do. That'd be a great way for you to begin to glean some insight on the energy and the frequency going on with and around him. Okay. And why he was able to have such impact, sustainable impact too, because you can have a lot of impact through force, like through toxic, aggressive, controlling, masculine force that seeks to like be over people and make them lie and be unreal. It's just not sustainable. That's why it breaks. That's why everything so much is crumbling, because it's been based on lies planted in symbolically in the mind, cajoling and violence to get humans to cooperate with man-made systems. And so it'll last for some time, right? Like you can abuse somebody for a while, but eventually the shit is going to break, because if the the feminine is the house of this. It is the creation, it is the sustainer, it is so if the feminine is not dominant in it, it will not sustain. So history tells you that time and time again. Okay. So mm, so I'd like to talk about sensation now. Okay, I'd like to talk about sensation and navigating sensation. Whew. And before I go on, I'd like to say this. If you are sincere about your own freedom and you feel it, and even beyond feeling it, you know that working with me and in my community is a good place for you to do that. My Womanhood Initiations will begin sometime next month. And it's an opportunity for us to have an experience on Zoom to see if the woman community which is $99 a month, is for you. Okay, this is where we go deeper and we actually start to do this work and hold you as you start to explore your primal self, your power, um, and really coming back to the nothingness of you, so you can access the all of you. If you'd like to get on the wait list for my womanhood initiations, you can go to the link in my bio and click Womanhood Initiation. YouTube, the link to get on the wait list is in the description of this video. And hello, YouTube, I see you. Thank you for liking the video. Thank you for the hearts. So let's talk about sensation and shame and sex. Sensation, shame, and sex. That sounds like a book, huh? That sounds like a series. Sensation, shame, and sex. And the ego. So I think anybody who's stuck around for the last, for some time now today, or who constantly watches my content, you already know that the ego mind is a tyrant. The ego mind, unchecked, let me say, because there's definitely a useful place for the ego. But for most of us, the ego is a tyrant. Once it activates, for most of us, when it comes to power, it will take us out of the game. Most of us are not in authority. We have not developed the skill of how to use the ego in service to our highness, if you will. Okay, most of us are not skilled at that level, which is one of the many things that my uh, um, community helps you to do. So, what that looks like, an unrefined or lacking the skill of having your ego be in service to your highness for a woman, is that you meet a guy, or it doesn't even have to be a guy, just using this to be inside of the conversation of sex. Okay, it could be anywhere. It could be with your mom, it could be somebody at work, it could be anywhere. However, to keep this inside the domain of sex, I'm going to talk about it with a potential sexual mate. Okay. And uh, something happens that feels like a slap to your ego, you will clench, right? We can all agree on that, right? Somebody says something you don't like. Let's focus on the man right now. He maybe approaches you in a way that you don't like. Um, or let's say, how about this? You actually like his approach, all the things, and it begins to feel too good. Let's go there. You like the way you feel in his presence. Okay. Uh, um, you feel yourself melting, if you will, in his presence. You feel the part of you that wants to give yourself over to him with no games. You don't want to make him jump through hoops. You don't want to lie. You don't want to do. You feel the part of you that wants to just. And typically, what happens in situations like that? Somebody want to answer that? What typically happens in situations like that? Now, assuming this is a guy that you don't really know like that, like maybe you just met him a week ago or today, or right? You said you haven't had sex with him, but you feel this already. What do we typically do? What do we typically do? Somebody want to answer that? Somebody said get addicted. Somebody said there's great potential for that, right? And there's a place for that. This is what I mean. Somebody said hide it. Somebody said give our power. Somebody said you get too far ahead of yourself and pull back. Put my guard up. Yeah, all this. Forget ourselves. All these things, right? Now, I'd like to have this conversation from a much higher perspective. This is a much higher perspective, meaning when you go out into the world today or tomorrow for the rest of your life, you're going out very intentionally. And what is the intention? To be free. What is the intention? To be true. What is the intention? To be pure and to engage in anything that gives you an opportunity to purify yourself. Now, I often say purification is dirty work because it is. Most of us, no matter how well dressed we are, no matter how organized we are in our adult life, no matter how decent we think we are, et cetera, we all are walking around with a demon, with insecurities, with fears, with deep, dark shit in our unconscious mind. All of us. Remember, I said earlier that we put forth an exorbitant amount of energy to appear like good people. Okay? When all of us are animals, every human being is an animal. So when the intent is to be free, to purify, and then for those of you who have a real purpose in life, right, to do extraordinary things and to lift yourself in such a way that you are in service to, that you can infuse people with power, lead, do wonderful things, you are so hyper intentional with so much of what you do, right? So when you go out and you're interacting with a person, it's not just a whatever casual kind of interaction. You may be even assessing, oh, is this the man who is going to hold my vision and take the action to make it real? Oh, is this the man who's going to be on my team? Oh, is this the man who's going to come in and teach men? Like, when you start operating at higher levels, when you go out, you're at this level of intention. And when you're in the presence of this man who I just described, and you can see the part of you that's just the part of you, especially when you're very masculine in your mind and you're a gripping woman, you're like, you like to feel like you're in control. So, and signs that a woman likes to feel like she's in control is she needs to plan every fucking detail. Everything needs to be together. She can't never just do the basics, or have other people do it, or like let her feminine self sort of intuitively do things and leave the rest up to the hands that guide her path. Right? She's like needs to research shit for 6 fucking years before she takes action, right? She needs to do this hyper due diligence on everything, come back for everything. She needs to respond to everything. Like these grippy masculine mind. This is what it looks like inside of a woman who's highly masculine and attempting to control in her behavior. Okay. And so when she goes out into the world, because we're very powerful, but we don't allow ourselves to actually exist in our full power because we're so afraid of the deep, deep power. So we settle for really cheap power that only gives us the material things, not the deep nourishment of the feminine. Okay. The feminine, the deep, full feminine feels no need to do it my way. And like, just no, but we have compassion around this. And this is why we're talking about this today. Okay. So when she's unrefined in her full power, her primal self, like the fullness of her, and she walks around going to Target to get coffee, to something to eat with this sort of like puffed up masculine mind way of being, when she meets this man whose presence starts to give her that feeling of not being in control, because his presence, because of whatever work he's done, because on an unconscious level, she's called in a man to help her drop in this way, but she's so used to gripping and trying to control it all that as soon as he comes into her presence and she starts to feel the sensation, remember I said where we're getting ready to go in this conversation is sensation, shame, and ego. She starts to feel the sensation of losing her fake control. What does the ego do? What does the ego do? Somebody answer me. A few of y'all answer me. What does the ego do? When she has not learned the skill of having the ego submit to her and interacting with it and using it for her highness, what does she do? She sabotages. Somebody says, what else does she do? She tries to protect her by telling her it's bad. One more person want to share? How about you two? What does she do? Or her ego self does? This is where the fake game starts. It's a fake game. Somebody say resentment, find something wrong, all that. Yep. So the fake game starts. What does the fake game look like? Having him jump through hoops, um, you know, testing him in the moment to just see if he's willing to play the ego game with her and drag him through that if he's willing to go through that. And if he is, it's going to be a she's going to hate it. She's going to hate it. Okay. Uh, um, Lie, try to control him, pick at him, all these things, because she started to feel the sensation of the access to the fullness, which is primal in nature for her. Okay, so this is just one example, and I want to go further with this. Now I want to bring in here. Um, I'm not sure about this part right here, so I'm going to leave it. The only reason why I thought is because of the sensation of it. It was right. I'm just not so sure if that's the best. And the fact that I'm even doubting like this, I'm going to hold off on it. So, sensation. How does this look like? Any kind of sensation, right? Sensation is what we all felt when we watched Diddy kick Cassie, right? This is a good example. Everybody had a reaction, right? But before the reaction, when you first watched the video, you had a sensation in your body. I'm just using that because it's trending right now, right? You had a sensation in the body. Anybody here remember the sensation they felt in their body? Really feel into what is the sensation when you watch that, right? Or the sensation this woman felt that I just described, who's controlling, when this man is in her presence and she feels herself melting, the sensation that she feels that makes her grip. The sensation that you feel when you are in a sexual encounter with a man and you show up to it, you're in it as the self that you see yourself as, however you see yourself. And something happens in that interaction that opens up a part of you that you've yet to experience. And your first sensation could be shame because you don't see yourself like that. Carl Jung and Tony, oh, this is a professional man whose patients are coming to him, paying him to help them do whatever. And suddenly now he's having urges. And what does that all mean? And what happens in the mind and the body sensationally, that where a person decides how they're going to handle that. And that if the ego is not in check, and if you don't become present and notice what's happening inside of you, you're going to grip it, you're going to reject it, push it away, you're going to make up stories about it. Oh my God, you don't make up stories about what it means. And see, which is what Freud would do about women. He would project onto them, and actually Freud and Carl Jung talked about what the woman is, and create these stories. And so much of it was from the very unconscious mind that he didn't want to explore. You actually believe the things that project onto women, which is what Freud was doing. But because Carl Jung was clearly operating from a higher mind and wanted to understand, what is this anyway that I'm feeling, versus immediately jumping to what she means because of the symbols that's been in his unconscious mind, and projecting that onto her, observing her from a distance as the uppity psychologist who's the man and who knows what it is, while not knowing what a woman is all along, which he never gets access to full power because he's so busy projecting. So this is the male version of feeling sensation, clenching, and going into story making. This is where I just Okay, so Freud was the toxic masculine who needed to be right and was hyped up on cocaine and was disconnected from women in a real embodied physical way, and instead treated them like these separate entities who were negative. He talked about women in very negative ways and very like small and child and and not saying that's not an aspect of us, but he was not aware of the fullness of us. And so again, this is why he and Young started to split. When Young started to actually do the work, which is difficult, humiliating, highly sensational, and has the ego out of the way and in service to your highness. Because as long as you're like Freud, who needs to be right and you know what it is, and hyped up on cocaine, which was legal at the time, right? This sort of basically as I've recently found out, whether you believe it or not, true or not, is the symbol of it that Christ's disciples hated the fact and was questioning Jesus about why he trusted Mary Magdalene so much, why he was so close to her, why he saw her as the one that was going to lead forth the message, the one to charge forth and be the leader. And there was this whole, why do you trust her? How can a woman be this? A woman cannot be that. I mean, this is what some of the canon text is talking about. And this is demonstrated in Freud and in most of males today who they don't even know why. I mean, they'll say the Bible, they'll point to it, but most of them are not studying the Bible. They don't really know the nuance of the Bible. They don't know about how much the Bible has been divided and how many stories that are inclusive of women in power that have been removed. Even this sanitization of Mary Magdalene, who was a whore. So that whole story, though, of how Mark, John, Michael were questioning why Jesus is trusting this woman. Because, see, Jesus never got married, didn't have kids, and was true about the kingdom, which was this mind and true freedom. See? Which is what Jung was, okay? Versus Freud. Freud wanted to maintain what the church had instilled to keep people in this fake illusion of power and this pretending to be good and being so diluted and an unconscious mind with what's good, what's right, the position of a man, the position of a woman, which has us all today starving for freedom, starving for connection, starving for love, starving for heaven on earth, starving to right all the wrongs, for real love, not this gripping transactional love where if you act like this, then I'll love you. Not if you perform and give me and do this. On both sides, the men doing it, the women doing it, and now we're like this, because the truth is we're looking for that deeper, feminine, vast energy that has all things, knows all things, is all things, that men of old and Freud was like, untrustworthy, because when you get into vast territory, you cannot control it. It has its own intelligence that is not of man's creation and do it like this. It is of, which is what we call God, like almighty, the all. But when it comes to the practicality of allness, the ego mind, which most humans are not in healthy relationship, they don't know how to even recognize when it activates, how it looking at when their sensation gets triggered and how their unconscious reaction just automatically goes to look at something like that and then project a story and then keep going in a cycle because you keep looking at it and thinking at it like that versus exploring, which is difficult, thinking, which is difficult, going into the unconscious mind, which is difficult. It's much easier to project, take what you've already been thinking, taking the stories that exist today to keep humans in bind, project that onto him, project that onto her, and perpetuate that. So when you as a woman are looking to drop down into this vastness and you're in the presence of this man, or you're in the bedroom with this man, or a part of you that you've yet to explore that activates, and but then shame because I want to look good. I don't want to look like a whore. I don't want to look like a this. I don't want to look like a, how's he gonna, right? And so when you are not actively, consciously choosing who you're having sex with, who you're interacting with, why you're doing this, everything, the ego will come in, grip, and you will stay out of it, and then you will hate it later. Just think about the times where you knew you wanted to do this thing, but you let fear and ego come in and grip it. Then the event passed. And then when you thought about it later, you regretted how you handled it. Like some woman said here, sabotage. You're like, man, I wish I would have, So your job then is to start to get in a regular relationship with your ego self, the shame and sensation in you. Your ego self, shame, and sensation in you. Again, if you are sincere about freedom, if you notice that you are tight in your body. So I want to talk about the difficulty of this. This is the narrow path. This is a difficult path. This is not TikTok cute. This is like, particularly for melanin dominant women, oh my God, the way men are going to attack. Just know that that's going to happen. The men are going to attack. And you already know that they're going to attack. You already know. You already know what they're going to say. How do we already know this? Because this is what they've done historically. Before Christianity was even a widespread thing, they created whole names and ways of looking at a woman who was activated and on. You can go read the Malleus Maleficorum, which is basically a Bible, if you will, for how to hunt women who were powerful. Two German monks created in cahoots with the Roman Catholic Church. They publicized it, made it a public thing in the 1400s, and basically it gave instruction for men on how to identify, capture, torture, and kill women who were powerful. It had language in there, it had ways of being, what to do, how to handle. The Malleus Maleficorum, which you can begin to look at on Amazon now. So that's that time, which overlapped with chattel slavery and so much more. They're going to call you whores. They're going to call you Jezebels. At the same time, being attracted to the power that you walk around. Okay. And there will be few men, and it is now time for these men to be activated and lean in. Lean into my community, lean into me, and be put to work. Because any man who's doing this work with a woman, I'm telling you, the level of masculinity that he will develop. Carl Jung was a man of men. He was a man of men. Go read up on him. Go read about all of the, I was going to say, peon men who constantly came around. Because Carl Jung had women coming to him. His greatest student was Marie von France. You can go check her out on YouTube. Bounty of videos of her. She became accomplished and successful. My gosh, she flew to him. Women would come to him because he was so deep in the feminine. He was so dangerous to the status quo at the time. He was breaking all the rules. in his quest to understand what is this with my female clients who were at the time getting banished by men. Housewives were housewives who were feeling sensation, who were aroused, were giving lithium. They were being put in the nut house for their arousal, for not keeping their full power. Tamp down, submit. It is so unfortunate that so many Black men, yes, Black men, continue to agree by their words and their actions that the power that they love to understand and get when it comes to like invisible mythical deities and goddesses of the past. They talk about them with reverence and power and ferocity and creator and destroyer. And they get it when it's this distant mythical being, not realizing that those mythical distant beings are in our bodies now, today. And when I say this, first of all, the conversation of submission is such an inferior conversation when we're talking about power. It is so inferior when we're talking about the high power of a being, man or woman. Really? We're talking about be quiet and your job is to cook it. Like, there's a part of me that feels disgusted by even having that conversation. Do you understand? We're talking about a cosmic, vast beings that we are. And you want to talk to me about fucking submission? Just stop. But this was the whole intent of the church, though, to neuter us all, to control us all, to get us down into these fractions of ourselves so that we cooperate with what folks have been cooperating with for centuries. This is why, as I said earlier, the fakeness, just the fakeness of everything, the way we just for all of our lives have agreed to act like this, the way we've agreed to, like I saw a young white girl put up a video. She looked like she might have been about 20. It was a viral video. I wonder if you guys saw it. She was like, everybody's life, the white girl, but everybody's life will be a lot easier when we recognize it's fake, like everything, even your career, even this. We all just agree to this shit. I was like, she got it. She got it. She's like, we all just agree. Even if you agree, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, because obviously a lot of people want to do it because they do it. The traditional marriage of husband, wife, children in the suburbs, we look at the, sold, house sold, we bought our first house, the American dream. Like, like, it's not about right or wrong, you should or shouldn't, but clearly a lot of people want to do that because a lot of people do that, right? That's just those two people agreeing to do that. That is something that was laid down before any of us got here. Like buying a home, the whole buying a home even came about because banks needed money. The American dream, a bunch of men who ran banks needed money. They sat around and came up with, how do we do this? Oh, we lend people these loans to buy these houses, have this thing called interest, and we create a story around it to make it desirable, call it the American dream, which is why we call it the American dream to buy a house. Have you ever questioned where that came from? And it's just like any story that could be created and painted as desirable to make people want it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that's how the American dream came about. The idea of till till death part in sickness and in health, that's to feed the biological need to belong somewhere. On one level, at another level, it was to calm down the sexual aggression of males. You can go read about how the modern day institution of marriage even came about. The ones who were in control, who wanted power, recognized that young males, if they don't have pussy, like this is being talked about today, that young males who don't have pussy, they don't have access to women because now women are becoming liberated, which is why we needed women to be not liberated and to make themselves small and to be ashamed of being small. Because if men can't access to them, conquer them, have them, we have these sexually aggressive males running around, and they're going to come after our wealth. They're going to come after our power. They're going to come after our control, and we can't have that. So how do we neuter? How do we calm them down? You give them a woman. That's why the average man, you give him a woman, his job will be to maintain that, whether he does that in a positive way or a negative way. He will only focus on maintaining that, which means the powers that be can continue to do what they do. Now, he might yell about it, you know, that's about eat the paper or watch it, but he's not going to engage his life force energy to tear that shit down. But if he don't have no woman around giving him pussy and food, he's a fucking problem. He's a problem. He's dangerous. And we see, well, I see, do you see these conversations going around on the internet talking about one of the big problems in society right now? So many young men are addicted to porn, not connecting with women, how they're now becoming like prey for this election coming, preying on their sexual aggression. They're upset. They become more prone to red pill content, voting against anything that would look like freedom and liberation. Are you guys seeing this? These conversations happening on podcasts all over now. And so that was part of why marriage was created. But men today don't know that. Most men don't know that. They don't know how the American have regular access to coochie. Okay. They don't know that part of the advent of the traditional marriage was to calm sexual aggression and to make sure we don't have to worry about you coming after us, because as long as you're trying to maintain the house and we give you this false power of the man, right? And make sure the woman is symbolically in her own mind believes that she's this inferior being, because that's why we play small the way we do. It has been implanted in us for a long time, long before we got here, right? And I talked in great detail about this the other day. We all know this, to be very afraid to unleash this. Be very afraid, be very afraid, be very afraid to unleash this. Because once this comes out, and this is why the church needed to shut it down. We can't maintain control if that's unleashed. We can't Men can't have access and just control and come in and do. So they use their physical strength. They use symbols. They created the Malleus Maleficorum to institute a new social order and called it righteous, called it law, called it divine order. I am going to be meeting with my community, my women community, at 3 o'clock today, which is soon. So I need to go. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm going to come over here and look at questions and comments. So again, our womanhood initiations are going to start. Consider community, which is $99 a month. Go to the link in my bio, click Womanhood Initiation. There's so much more to this. I just began to have this conversation. This is not even touching the tip of the iceberg, but I just felt called to come and begin this conversation. I have contacted two black men to come and help me. Not a favorable response. Let me go over here. Somebody say, yeah, she was married, Mary Magdalene. That's the story. I mean, like, keep in mind, none of us really know. I know there's lots of writings and stories, but none of us really know. And if you found value here today, yes, Cash App is the way to show your appreciation and plant a seed. His wedding was the day he did the first miracle, and that's why he valued her and understood the feminine more than his disciples. Yeah. Oh, he said that's too much power. Who would they who would they go after though? Can you explain? Was that in response to who would they go after though? Can you explain? Was that in response to who would the men go after? Right. So amazing. Thank you. You're welcome, Jessica. Is the unconscious? Oh, okay. I already answered those. Is the women's group? It is not only for melanin dominant women. Thank you for asking the question, Candace. It's for all women who feel called to the group. It's pretty potent and intense in there. So I just want the white women to know that. A woman from the UK came to the Womanhood Initiation the other day, and I broke it down to her. And then another woman, white woman, signed up, and then she left. She told me she just wanted to come in for a month, though. It's really potent, and most white women, the average white woman, is not used to being in a highly concentrated, melanin dominant, powerful space. So just keep that in mind. You're very welcome. All women are welcome, all races, nationalities who are 18 and up. And just know that this is potent. I'm melanin dominant. So obviously, as the leader, there's that essence that's in the space. And so it's likely going to be foreign for you. And so you just be ready for that. I told you all, this is difficult work. It's difficult. Like you don't do anything that's eternal, that impacts the collective, that's easy. You know, like I said, Carl Jung, he's the godfather of deep psychology because he did difficult things. He talked about the difficulty of navigating being a husband and a father, which the wife was really running things, but act as the stabilizer while he was doing this very tumultuous, ego defying, disruptive work of exploring the feminine with Tony through sex. I'm a powerful black man who's sincere about full power. You will not the you that you can be happens when your dick is covered in the pussy juices of a full, primal, vast, activated woman. It will not happen with this submissive woman that y'all think y'all want. It's this is a high game. The submission game is a low game. I'm talking about highness here. So the real kinghood, if you will, that keeps being talked about, for you to even be talking about that puts you in an inferior position. The highness, I'm talking about a much higher game. Which is such a navigation to even exist like in a unified way while navigating the two, because you're aware that you're dealing with people who are very much still dealing in lower ways, lower thoughts, lower. And so it's such a responsibility and the skill to continue to exist at this level. But none of us are existing at this level sustainably unless we are, um, when we're working together, in the right sex with the right people. Like Tony, Carl Jung could not have done that with his wife who was unwilling. He could not have done that with a regular woman, with a good woman, with a woman who plays small and lies and is afraid of her sexuality and is afraid of primal. He could not have done that. And no man who's going to have eternal, sustainable impact in his own life and over humanity that's of highness is going to be. You don't even have to agree with me. It is. You know, how does one navigate the loneliness that comes with? Oh, this is a great question. So I on my wall right now on TikTok, there's a video where I say it's like 35 seconds, and it's my voiceover basically saying that four ways to, I think I said, reconcile misery and apathy on the path of power is accepting that you're on a narrow path, accepting that you're on a narrow path, an uncomfortable path, and then get around women who are doing the same work, which again is why my woman community exists. Okay. OG said this is so good. Yeah. I'm glad you find value. Please like the video here on YouTube if you have been finding value and share it. So, how do you navigate it is really accepting that it is a difficult path, that it is a narrow path, and do what you genuinely desire to do. Like, really follow primal urges. All of this will open up so much for you. And then, obviously, get into community. If you feel like you're ready for community, you need community, obviously, get into community. How does a man, it's not a struggle. It's not a struggle. Jarek said, how does a man assist you in this struggle? So when you say you, I'm going to imagine you're talking about the feminine you, like all of us, is you suspend any knee jerk reactions that you have as you interact with women. Because here's the thing about a woman, we have been trained to accommodate. Like, just lie immediately because we're so afraid of being called something, looked a certain way, l- losing love and resources and attention. So we like default go into, and while to your ego self, you like that because you feel like, oh, she's accommodating me. Oh, she's good. Oh, she's malleable. Oh, she's cooperative. On the ego level, you'll like. What you don't realize you're getting is a woman who will really hold a lot of negative emotion and energy. And when you fuck her, that's what you're fucking. Okay. And you never come into your full masculinity because you have a woman who's repressed. And so when you're interacting with women, whether daughters, aunts, mom, cousins, potential lovers, potential spouse, girlfriends, whatnot, notice any kind of negative visceral reactions. Notice any kind of knee jerk. Notice how you project onto her when she's not noticing. Notice what stories you may be making up about her intent, about what it is. Women can feel that too if she's present with you. And instead, and recognize that she's an animal like you and that everybody wants to be free. Not everybody wants to play the big game to get free, but everybody on some level wants to be free. And ask her honest questions from a place of genuine curiosity, not questions that are laced with shame. Like, why would you do that? Because we can feel that. Just like you can feel when a woman is asking you a question that's implying a negativity, she can feel that. So if you want to create a war, if you want to create a tension, if you want to do that, okay, fine. Go ahead and do that. But if you're really sincere about having an on woman, and here's the thing about the value of an on woman. She really wants you because she wants you. She doesn't want you because she needs you. Now, a lot of men need a woman to need them because they're not in truth, they're not in their full masculinity. So they're depending on her feeling a sort of need. I need him. I'm attached because I need. And a lot of that comes from a very insecure place within a man. Whether he will acknowledge that or not, it's a very insecure place. When you're in a relationship with a woman who feels entirely safe to be her full self, and this takes such responsibility, such when you're with a woman like that and she knows it, you can have her. She's there for you. She's not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere. Most men don't trust this because most men are programmed to be in transactional love. I will pay for this and do this, and therefore you will cook for me. You will give me coochie when I want it. You will play the game that makes me gives me these feelings. We're all living in lies. These feelings of a man. If that is enough for you, hey, go for it. Apparently, a lot of men want it because that's the transactional situations that they're in. Okay. For the rare men, for the Carl Jungs of today, black, white, and otherwise, who know that women are these vast creatures. Even what's your boy who was obsessed with the number three? What's your boy name? Tesla, Nikola Tesla, who never got married, who never had kids. He said, the feminine is too vast for me to even pretend that I can conquer it. That I can, I'm paraphrasing, you know, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but you go research them when he about love and women and this, and when you really start dealing in nature, and this man is dealing with electricity, he's dealing with actual nature and the isness of nature. When you really start dealing in it, you start to see what a woman is. And men of old knew that's why they needed to calm, calm put shame, put just everything that's been done to distort and create lies and have you feel this like knee jerk guilt, this knee jerk shame when your natural starts to rise. It just kind of, and then all the other women start policing while deep inside they can see like I want that, but no, I, there's like an admiration from afar, but I I can't. I was. You see, you see. Okay, I gotta go. Ah, so glad to get that out. It was get out. Thank you so much. Please share this YouTube. Thank you all so much for being here. See you soon. Bye.